The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
Dave, you ever get that situation where your boss kills your girlfriend and tries to frame you for the murder, and then he puts you in charge of framing yourself even though he doesn't actually know that you're the murderer?
Man, I hate when that happens.
Shall we begin?
This week, we are once again bringing you a movie whose status as a spy movie is debatable. At its heart, it's a neo-noire political thriller whose characters just happen to be involved with, or at least adjacent to, intelligence agencies in Washington, D.C. circa 1987. I'm Todd.
And I'm Dave, and we like to talk about spy movies.
Here at Spies Like Us, we do like exploring the outer boundaries of the spy movie genre, and this one gives us a healthy amount of tradecraft to dissect. We're talking 1987's No Way Out on this episode of Spies Like Us. We got here, let's see, 1987. It's a contemporary movie, purely fictional. Agencies featured are the CID, which we're going to talk about which CID exactly the characters are referring to later in the show. We also see the CIA and the KGB. All these agencies have fairly small roles in the story, but our main character served in naval intelligence before taking on a special assignment for the Department of Defense. You remember when I first was telling you about this movie that it's not a spy movie? Well, that's debatable. But what at least I told you, it's not a spy movie per se, but it's more like a kind of like a murder mystery noir film that happens to be set in and amongst intelligence agencies. So,
right,
fun one to do.
That's a good way to describe the movie.
Sure,
there's tons of intelligence and Department of Defense and all kinds of government, like military agencies involved, and then there's like a murder mystery.
Right. And I checked, and during research for this, I found out, my description was, because I was telling you, like, it could have, for instance, been set in a police department, and been the same story.
Right.
Or other spots. In research, I found out it's based on a 1946 novel, which it's the same story, except it's set at like a New York magazine, something like Time Magazine or something.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And wow. So it's a reporter and the editor, the guy and his boss.
Right.
And then they made a movie in 1948, also set at a magazine. There's another French movie in 1976. It's called Police Python 357. Boom, there you go. Presumably that one is, a cop versus his chief.
Oh, okay.
The core conceit of the movie, which is pretty ingenious, it is what runs through all of them, is the situation where you have two guys. One of them Guy A works for Guy B. Guy B kills a woman. And Guy A knows that he did it. Guy B knows that he was seen by somebody, but he doesn't know who. He doesn't know that it was Guy A. And then decides, well, I'm going to try to frame whoever that was, and gives his subordinate, Guy A, the job of like proving that it was Guy A that did the murder. It's it's kind of convoluted, but it's a nice little engine to build a story around.
Right.
There is a spoiler in the movie. I question like how, sometimes I listen to, if I haven't seen the movie, I come across a podcast like this. Sometimes I'll listen to the podcast first, or I'll listen to it at least deep enough to decide if I want to watch the movie. And sometimes I'd rather listen to the people discuss the movie before I go watch it. This is a 1987 movie. The spoiler, it's kind of big, but also kind of insignificant. Here's your chance to run off if you don't want to hear it, just if you're a total purist. Okay, cool. Gene Hackman character is going to try to frame, he's Guy B, and he's going to try to frame guy A as being a Russian spy. That's Kevin Costner. And at the very end of the movie, you find out Kevin Costner actually was a Russian spy, which is, how do you feel about that? Just as a movie mechanic.
I kind of felt like it was really unnecessary, other than to explain a few things. Like, it was just kind of like, hey, by the way, he was a Russian spy the whole time, and it had nothing to do with the entire movie we watched.
Yeah, it's not exactly like finding out Bruce Willis was dead the whole time.
Right, yeah. This definitely could have taken some notes from M. Night Shyamalan, which I guess.
There's one reviewer that said it's actually a better movie if he showed up 5 minutes late and left 5 minutes early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. I would agree with that. The beginning of this film was not that interesting until like the actual like plot kicked in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It seemed, I generally like more setup with things and things taking their time to marinate. But I think it's important to not just have a bunch of stuff that it didn't affect anything. You know what I mean? Like you go through this whole like romance at the beginning, which I guess made you feel worse about the murder. But I don't know. It seemed like a lot of fluff, and I think they could have cut a lot of the beginning of the film.
So, but technically, the fact that Kevin Costner is a Russian spy, even though, like we said, like it really doesn't impact the story at all, that does technically make it an actual spy movie, like in a legalese sense.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Well, and he was naval intelligence, right? Yes. Even if he wasn't the mole, he was naval intelligence, and he was doing intelligence for Gene Hackman. So I would call this a spy movie, even though we don't get a whole lot of spying other than the trying to solve the murder, I guess.
Sure. And so since the fact that he's a spy like has so little impact on the whole movie, I thought we'd talk about that kind of at the end of the recording. Like that'll come out like next week. We'll go back and say like, does now that you know that he's a spy the whole time, do all of his actions make sense at knowing that fact along the way?
Right.
I think we'll have some good conversation on that situation. This is a movie, you are new to the movie. I got a history with it. I was 16 when it came out, although I didn't find it until video, so I guess I was 17 when I found it. I did like it quite a bit. I watched it more than a few times. I'm a very like my at core, I'm a very science fiction fantasy kind of guy. And especially as a kid I was, and I think it was just like coming into my teens. This is around the time when I started actually paying attention to movies that didn't have a spaceship or a dragon in it. I think this is around too when I really started to dig on Hitchcock movies, and there's a whiff of Hitchcock in this. Very well received by critics. It's got a 91% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's also kind of interesting that it's the beginning of Costner. He had showed up in the summer in the it's the Untouchables, right?
Yeah,
right. And that's the same year. So it's the Untouchables and No Way Out, and before that, there's like nothing. You've never heard of Kevin Costner before this. It's No Way Out that really made people say like, this guy can totally carry a film as your handsome leading man hero.
Yeah.
I like, especially ever since I noticed the ordering of Known For on IMDb with Argo. And I looked into it and I noticed that like, you can put those in the order you want. And for big stars, I really assume they have a PR. This is just assumption on my part, but I assume they have a PR agent that would be doing this job. I mean, that seems like the bare minimum. Run my IMDb page for me.
Right.
So I assume it reflects like what Kevin Costner wants us to think of first when we look him up. And you know what his number one is?
What?
It's the Postman.
Really?
Yeah.
Even before Dances with Wolves?
It's right before Dances with Wolves. So same with Affleck. He's pushing his director stuff up ahead of his just acting stuff. But yeah, I like The Postman, but a lot of people did not and do not.
Right. I liked it. I liked it a lot, but I would think they would put Dances with Wolves up first.
Yeah. Because, well, that's the award winner. That's like an award sweeper, as opposed to The Postman, which just tanked.
Yeah.
But it could be one of those things of like, you know, maybe, again, this is all just on my theory that, you know, it's actually Kevin Costner wants us to think Postman first. Is this maybe just one of those, like, you know, like, hey, come on, guys, take another look. Take another look. It's not as bad as you heard.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised because his movie Open Range is actually one of my favorites as far as like cowboy movie goes. Because you know, like growing up, when you know I think of westerns, I just think of some like desperado that just rode into town, or like some posse that's gonna go get the guy. But I really liked Open Range because it was actually about cowboys. They drove cattle, and the first gunshot wasn't fired till like way halfway through the movie, and it was already a pretty long movie. But like all the gunshots were like super real sounding instead of like pew pew or something like I remember as a kid watching westerns. And I remember an interview with him, you know, they started asking him questions. He was like, "Look, it's my movie and it's the way I wanted it to be." And like, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, "Yeah, put The Postman number one. That's the movie I want people to know."
Right on. Yeah, I like it. Anything post-apocalyptic, it just gets like an extra star from me, like right out of the gate. Pretty hard to go wrong for me.
Yeah, I remember you were saying you wanted to maybe try and talk about post-apocalyptic movies at some point.
Yeah, that's if I had a friend that was as much into them as you are in the spy movies, I would be doing the movie podcast. And hey, just before we depart from The Postman, that's also Will Patton, Costner and Patton working together again, and opposite of each other, you know, like hero versus villain. 10 years after No Way Out comes out, Brad Pitt shows up in this film. He's an extra.
I saw that and didn't believe it, so I just checked it, and oh my God, there he is. He's just in the background smiling.
Yep. 1987. Nobody fucking knows who Brad Pitt is at this time, which is also weird to imagine.
Yeah.
He doesn't really show up. He doesn't really hit any like actual character roles until 1991, where he shows up as the charming drifter in Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
And of course, he's the stoner on the couch in True Romance.
True Romance, best role Brad Pitt ever.
Yeah.
Don't you condescend me with the honey bear bong? Oh my God. I always love seeing him in that movie. It's great.
And last note on the movie, worth noting, the scriptwriter just died like a month ago.
Oh.
At 83.
Oh, well, that's
Robert Warner Garland, thank you for a good script. I think it's a good script. I think you have questions about the dialogue. Do you want to talk about the dialogue now before we go to briefing room?
I'm just going to say my quick piece because, I mean, look, I don't want to make it sound like it's a crappy movie. So if you haven't seen the movie, like the actual like plot and like a lot of the tradecraft and a lot of the situations that are set up are like actually really good. And but this is a very 80s movie. The dialogue is just like super, like it reminded me of like the comedy bits in like old black and white movies that are like super on the nose. Like, here's a joke, you know, or like, here, let me say something like classy, you know, or something like that. And the dialogue seemed kind of mechanic. Like it just, I don't know. I feel like the script was written with the bullet points, and then the dialogue was just kind of put together to get to the bullet points. So if you can get over the dialogue the whole film, it's actually a pretty good, fun, like, kind of setup, and I enjoyed watching it kind of play out.
Yeah, I know that was a point for you because you kept laughing through the entire movie. Yeah. It didn't hit me quite the same way, but maybe it's because it's a movie that you know that I came up with. I mean, I came up alongside. So
Right.
80s stuff doesn't 80s stuff doesn't look as weird to me as it does to someone of your age. And
Well, I think it's because you grew up with it. Like,
yeah, totally.
there's a lot of movies that like I grew up with, and I bring that as I watch them again later, and I still think they're great. Which is like, this is the first time I saw this movie, and I was like, oh yeah, they used to write movies like this. Yeah. So yeah, I was kind of laughing the whole time at the dialogue.
Briefing room?
Yeah, briefing room.
Let's go.
Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
So yeah, a lot of this movie is going to unpack the romance between wow, I'm blanking on his name already. Tom Farrell.
Tom Farrell, that's right, yeah.
Yep. Tom Farrell and Susan. We're a spy movie podcast. We like to talk about tradecraft, so there's not much for us to say about the romance part. I did want to say real quick though, I thought that Sean Young, delightful as always, that I thought she played Tipsy really well. Like, she's in different scenes, she's a different level of drunk. Like, some places it looks like she's on her second glass of wine, and in other scenes it seems like she's on her eighth.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked watching her. She definitely plays like the flirt really well, and the like, I'm gonna enjoy my time at this like highly prestigious political gala, I guess we'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching kind of her, play the flirt with Costner. It was kind of fun.
The tipsiness thing reminded me of an anecdote from Big Lebowski, where apparently Jeff Bridges would, like, at the beginning of every scene, he would go up to whichever of the Coens was directing, and he would say, do you think the dude would have burned one, like, right before this scene? And they would think about it, and they would, yeah, I think he would have. And Jeff would say, right. And he would, like, rub his fists into his eyes real hard to make them red. And I like to think of Sean Young, like, at the beginning of each scene, asking, like, how many glasses of wine am I up to exactly at this?
Right.
Is it 2? Is it 4? Because I'll play it different if it was 2 or 4.
Right.
And then we got this backstory about a phantom sub that military contractors apparently are working on. Apparently the CIA is a big booster of this phantom sub project, but the current Department of Defense Secretary, Bryce, played by Gene Hackman, he doesn't like the phantom sub. But the CIA is kind of massaging really key and powerful members of the Senate. And so it's just kind of like, that's the little political tug of war that he's currently engaged in. Mm-hmm. And that is a nice setup for him to bring Tom Farrell on board onto his team, because like what he wants is someone that can kind of that knows a lot about submarines and naval intelligence kind of stuff. And Tom has got that. He's got 2 Navy tours, 2 tours with naval intelligence. And if anybody's curious, I looked it up. Currently, a Navy tour is 6 months at sea. So that's what that is. And also, Tom just, did this heroic rescue at sea kind of thing that kind of got his name in the papers. It doesn't hurt that Bryce's general counsel, in other words, like his attorney, not his personal attorney, but the person that this is assigned to function as the attorney for the office of the secretary, is an old friend of Tom's and speaks well of him. So they bring him on board and kind of give him the lowdown of what he's supposed to do and put it in his ear. Like, look, what I really want you to do is get the CIA's like real estimates on this Phantom Sub thing, not the official stuff, not the cleaned up stuff that's supposed to make it look like better than it is, but like what's the real raw data. And I really like the line that Gene Hackman feeds Tom Farrell as he's bringing him on board that says, like, this is great because you're a military officer, and as such, you're above all this political nonsense, which is great. That's huge plus politics points, I think, for Bryce, because he's exactly dragging this guy into all this political nonsense. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So fun with that.
Now, he's trying to get the raw data from the CIA, but when they do hand it over, it's the official estimate and not really what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to give this my number 3 best tradecraft.
Ooh, what you got?
It was really, this is kind of what established the character of Tom Farrell as like a competent spy, and even someone that could pull off like the big werewolf game that goes on later on. So we get a scene where he's first kind of meeting everybody, and he kind of plays dumb, like he doesn't know what he's going on. He's just like, asking questions. He's like, I'm like, oh, weren't you briefed? I'm like, well, not really. But if I'm going to be working on something, I kind of want to know a little bit about it, like, so he really, really like from the get-go kind of like sets the tone of like, oh, I'm a military guy. I just need info. Don't worry about me, type of thing. So I marked that as my number 3 best tradecraft.
All right, very good. And so that's the whole I don't know, situation that puts the characters into play, because along the way, like, rubbing elbows at the same kind of parties, Tom meets Susan. They begin having an affair. He's aware that from the get-go that there's another man involved in the situation. It's sometime later that he finds out that it's Secretary Bryce, who he works for. And that's where we have our situation. We get to our big clock core setup. 2 guys, they're both sleeping with Susan. And when she does get killed, which is a situation that would be like, it's manslaughter, not murder, right?
Mm-hmm.
As Tom was leaving her apartment and house, and Bryce was entering the house, Bryce was under a bright light, so they saw each other, but Tom was in the dark. And so again, Tom knows, when he finds out that Susan was killed, he knows that it was Bryce who did it. Bryce just knows that somebody else was there, and he wants to pin it on that guy.
But I wanted to mark this as my number 1 worst tradecraft. And I'm sure this is just to like make sense of Bryce being seen, but not Tom. But like, first of all, Bryce is the Secretary of Defense, a high political position. He's married. We're talking back then. It would have been a scandal if he was caught having an affair. He's parking right in front of her house under the brightest street lamp possible, like right under the street lamp. And I think this is something that someone of his level shouldn't be doing. Like, even as a politician, like,
oh, right, because he's married. He's married.
Right. He's married. He's having an affair. And what does he do? He parks right in front of her house under the lamp, the street light. And it's like, even forgetting tradecraft or the fact that he's dealing with intelligence of any capacity, he's a politician. So he would already know not to do something like this amateur. This is like straight like rookie mistake for a guy having an affair, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good call.
bad affair craft. I don't know,
For sure.
but I think he should know at his like level of a politician, especially dealing with intelligence, this is not the best thing to do. Like this is just bad counterintelligence. Like 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 later they're gonna make up a story about like a mole. Well, like any foreign intelligence would be having pictures of the Secretary of Defense, right? And they would know about this affair, even if you're not worried about the press, right? They're gonna just like throw pictures at you and be like, "Yo, you're having an affair. We're gonna this is how intelligence works. Like they basically will like punk you into doing what they want you to. Like that's like an easy. Anyway, that's my piece on that.
Even though I didn't want to dwell on the fact that Tom is in fact Yuri, but it's pretty. I think it's pretty bad minus spy points for him to call Susan after he leaves, while he knows that Bryce is there, and I'm
also bad at fair points.
Well, it's bad at fair points, right? Like you say, for sure. But considering that he's actually Yuri, he should be even more careful. Like that's why I call it minus spy points.
Oh no, absolutely. I completely agree. I think that was a bad step. Like maybe come back the next day or something, or whatever, or check on her. But it also built some tension for us as the audience, I guess. So
yeah, and I think it's important evidence that he is, because he's acting like, and I think it's the movie's giving us evidence that he's genuinely upset, which means he's genuinely into Susan. Which the whole first half of the movie, if it's not trying to establish that, then it's really fucking up, you know.
Yeah,
he's really in love with her.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing they tried to establish.
Right. But being in love definitely does not excuse you from getting minus spy points from the Spies Like Us podcast. In fact, often it's the reason.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Spies do fall in love, but that doesn't mean you don't get minus spy points for fucking up.
Right. Bryce, obviously, he didn't mean to kill Susan. He's really freaked out about it. Who does he call? He calls, obviously, his personal counsel, right? His officially assigned right-hand man, Pritchard, who's played by Will Patton. And actually, I'll just really quick say, like, I think Will Patton is probably, I think, like, the number one reason this movie is rewatchable. I think he's really fun in it. Watching him slowly go from so incredibly cool and collected to, just gradually, like, in every scene that he's in, he's like one tick more unhinged.
Right. Yeah. Right. I would agree with that. I think his performance was definitely the highlight. Not that ever, like I think all the actors, it was a great cast. Everybody in it like really had a great performance, but I think he really is the star of the show.
Yeah, well, and it's a good thing that him and Hackman and my girl are so good, because Kevin Costner's not good. He's never been good. He's watchable. He hits his marks, but he always sounds very flat to me. I'm not a
I liked him in this. I thought he played the mole playing the guy keeping the secret was pretty good. Despite the dialogue, but that's not his fault,
Sure. But Pritchard, and this is also, I think, a nice, not a twist, but a move that the movie makes is that really Bryce is not the villain of the story. He's a bad guy. He's an unlikable guy. He's a sinner. Right. He obviously lacks some self-control in a big way, but his instinct was to go to the police and turn himself in, and he just wanted his lawyer there to help him navigate that part of it. But right. Pritchard is like, oh no, hell no, and it's really Pritchard that is like pulling the strings through the entire movie and twisting it into the fucked up thing that it turns out to be. It's Pritchard.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, like you kind of mentioned this when we were watching it, that he's like the actual antagonist,
Oh yeah.
and or like you called him the villain. And I didn't quite get it till like as things kind of developed. Yeah, like you were saying, Bryce wanted to go to the police, and no, it was Pritchard that was like, no, we have to do this for the cause. We have to sell the story. We have to invent this story about a Russian mole, and he was the one that murdered her. So it's like things could have worked out like they should have until Pritchard steps in and crafts this master villainous plot to like tweak the narrative, so to speak, or whatever.
Explain it to me. What's his idea?
So what he's going to do is, well, like I said, there's going to be this big story that there's a Russian mole named Yuri, and it's a matter of national security because there's already like kind of some beef between the CIA and the DoD at this point. It's been established in the film, so he's able to kind of play strings in masking evidence based on national security, and that way he could kind of throw this story of Bryce, killing Susan just throw it under the rug, by controlling the evidence and the story because there's an investigation into this Russian mole that has penetrated,
Right.
American.
Because
Yeah.
the Department of Defense wouldn't have any business messing around with this murder at all.
Whatsoever.
So you got to
Right.
you got to find a reason that they can be involved and that they can take control of the situation. And so it's got to be somehow a matter of national security. And apparently, it's like in a lot of spy movies where they have these like ghost stories of a mole that have been kicking around for years, but there's never been any proof kind of
Right.
thing. But he's like, hey, that's that Yuri story. Let's say that we have reason to think it was him. So yeah, do you like his plan?
Oh yeah, major plus spy points. I was actually considering putting it on my best tradecraft list,
It's
but
pretty good.
yeah, I think, and this is when like we were talking about, the plot actually starts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this moment where this is one thing I really wanted to point out about this. When Bryce calls Pritchard, the first thing he says is, "I think I killed Susan," and I wanted to point that out because in like interrogation, books or videos that I've read or watched, there's a thing when people are trying to lie is they'll try and kind of like soften it up, and so the way he puts it, I thought it was really, really well done, because that's kind of something. Oh, I kind of remember that I did this, or I think I might have done that. Like, that's not like a full on confession or a full on reason to believe that this is your guy, but that's like a thing to mark. Like, oh, I need to investigate this a little further to determine if this. So I really liked that he was like, oh, I think I killed Susan. And then, of course, Pritchard shows up and he's just going to clean house. Like, he's just like, don't worry, I'll take care of all of this.
Right. Well, yeah. And I also think that he's supposed to be here in the first stage of grief or trauma, which is denial, right?
Right.
He doesn't want it to be true, but yeah.
Yeah.
So what they're going to do then is they're going to put it under the purview of the CID. And they mention the CID multiple times throughout the movie. And I was like, well, who's the CID? Let's go to Google. Tap, 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 tap. So CID is kind of a generic term in a way. It's kind of like HR, right? Like, there's no single organization called Human Resources, but like every company's got like an HR department, and a lot of agencies have embedded within them something that they will call the CID. It's the Criminal Investigation Department. So there were, I found a big list of different CIDs that exist. Later in the movie, a journalist that's reporting on the story is going to refer to them as the Army CID, which is definitely a big thing. But I don't think I don't think Army CID makes sense for what we see in the movie. Because remember, okay, it is the Department of Defense. Yeah, they do oversee like all of the armed forces, right? Don't they?
Mhm.
In a way, at least. I mean, technically the president is the commander in chief, but I think all of that gets routed through the Department of Defense. But this really isn't an Army issue. It's got nothing to do with the Army. Maybe it's just like the scriptwriter got it slightly wrong. Or I could, for example, posit that maybe the reporter just got it slightly wrong, right? Because she's just heard about the story. There's another CID that I think fits what we see happen in the movie much better. The Department of Defense does have its own CID. It's called the DCIS, and it would be really the exact agency that they would like try to move investigation of this murder under, that the Secretary of Defense would be like directly involved in. There's one missing person here though, which is fine. Like, you can't overcomplicate the movie with too many characters, but technically that CID would report to the Inspector General of the Department of Defense. And so the way that they have it is that, basically this CID, whoever it is, they're reporting directly to Bryce and Pritchard. And it's not actually, like, it doesn't actually factually check out that the Secretary of Defense would be able to run the CID directly from his office. It would have to go through the Inspector General. There's just a chain of command thing that is missing from the movie. But overall, I mean, I think it's cool. I do appreciate also that I definitely appreciate that, because all of this is super shady. It would be super shady in reality to keep the CIA, the FBI, and the Washington Police Department out of this. They do nod to the fact that they need to move fast before they get caught doing this. Like they acknowledge that this is not how it's supposed to work at all. Right. I didn't even understand too, like Bryce said, like, we're going to put you in charge of the investigation. It's under your purview as part of your office. It's not. It's totally not. But that's what they do. They even, took the body to a military base, is what's stated, and didn't even tell Washington PD, like, what happened. I gotta wonder, like, wouldn't Washington PD eventually, like, get a missing persons report? Like,
well, if this is like a national security thing, they probably would have been able to kind of cut through a lot of like local red tape, maybe.
I buy that.
I mean, that would be my guess. One of the things when Pritchard sends in the goons, that kind of bothered me a little bit. And I was like, well, no, if this is a supranational security issue, they might need to like stop things before something really bad happens. Like how Pritchard gets like the assassin squad,
Quado and company.
Yeah, right. It kind of bugged me, like how would he even have the authority for this, like to just pull some random assassins? And then I was like, well, the setup is that this is a big matter of national security. There's a possible mole. Some of our people could be killed, so we need to get moving and like strike before we're struck type of thing. And I was like, well, I guess that kind of works out.
What bothers me about that, and why I give it -5 points, is that again, Pritchard is the general counsel to the Secretary of the Department of Defense. He's basically his lawyer. There's no world in which that guy has access, like direct access, to give direct commands to these kind of like what seem like kind of like some badass black op wet work kind of guys.
Yeah.
And there's definitely there's definitely no such guys as those in really any CID department.
Right.
Definitely not the DCIS.
Right.
Yeah, so I'll yeah, that's my number 3 worst. Again, I just liked unpacking, like, does this whole like structure of the investigation, how much sense does it make and how much doesn't it? It all functions fine in the movie. Like it doesn't nothing, comes out and springs out at you and says like, this is not how things are done, because most of it is stuff that the movie audience has no idea, like how all this structure actually works. But that's why we have a podcast to talk about it.
Yeah. Right.
Over in the CIA situation, that we're coming up on another worst tradecraft of mine, which is where okay, so O'Brien is the CIA guy that they're putting Tom Farrell in contact with to try to massage out this Phantom Sub information. And he gets some weird vibes, around the time that, because basically that's one situation that was supposed to be happening, but then this murder came along and fucked everything up. And now it's, taken over and become a completely different story. But, the CIA guy does report back to the director and says, tells him that he kind of knows they're doing some weird shady stuff around there. They're putting up a whole witch hunt under a sort of thing that really should be our job to take care of, right? Or the FBI. Who's actually, let me ask you this, if you have knowledge or opinion on, because I think what I've read, the FBI is actually in charge of a lot of like counterintelligence in the US.
Yeah, that's actually their role. The CIA, like as far as domestic counterintelligence goes, the FBI, I believe, are the most like the that's like their responsibility. Like there's always like the old image of J. Edgar Hoover, going on his like communist witch hunt, like that's because that was their role. It's actually like illegal, I think, or at least was, for any of the other intelligence agencies to spy, quote unquote, on Americans.
Right? Isn't the CIA is actually like countermanded against doing any operations within the borders of the U.S.? Is that true, or is that just something I heard once? What do you think?
I think they weren't supposed to, whether or not they actually did, but I know that there's other things they're allowed to do, and especially like the NSA, as far as like collecting public data. So I'm sure there's some like gray areas that they can skate around, but yeah, predominantly the FBI is responsible for domestic counterintelligence.
Right. Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah, that matches what I've heard. But regardless, the CIA has got an axe to grind against Bryce, and the guy tells the CIA director about what's going on, and he also specifically flags that that one naval guy, Tom, he looked like a guy that would like to have a heart to heart. That's the term he uses. A man who would like to have a heart to heart. I'm gonna give it minus spy points for not following through on that.
Yeah,
they don't do anything with it. They just sit there.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, or at least we're not shown a reason why they ignore it.
My last question is: do you think it ever really makes sense for Tom to not go straight to the FBI? I mean, he threatens to,
right?
Or he strongly suggests it, or he could, for instance, maybe confide in the major, the black guy that is like running things on the CID side. Did the movie ever give us a solid reason for him to not, just blow it open?
This might be the reason for the whole Russian mole being a reality, to kind of tie that up. Because if he went to the FBI, that might compromise his position. Like they might start looking into him. But the other thing is, I think he's more worried about being caught because he'd become a suspect. They would find out that he was sleeping with Susan. And it's kind of like why Pritchard tries to contain everything and keep it from the other departments so that he can kind of control the information and the reporting, and I don't think Tom would want anybody else outside of his like immediate realm of influence, because then he's going to immediately become a suspect.
Okay, so that's the whole like way that they're gonna try to run the investigation and all that setup. And then I want to give a recap of like basically the second half of the movie, and then we'll come in and talk about some specifics. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
So since they trust Tom, they put him in charge of the investigation. At least they put him in charge of the in-house stuff. They're not telling. It's the CID that's clearly making their own moves going out there, because they go out and they find like the boat rental guy. They find the valet at the hotel that Susan and Tom had visited. It's not Tom that's giving them those orders to go out and do that investigation. So clearly they're kind of operating on their own, but they gave Tom the job of basically like triaging all the intel that's coming into the department, into the Pentagon, which is a totally perfect place for Tom to be if he wants to slow this investigation down. And that's really the whole fun of the movie and why I always liked it in the first place. This whole like, the second half of the movie, like being kind of like a trapped in the house with and being assigned to find yourself.
Right. When you first described that to me, it reminded me of Adaptation, where like the one twin brother is writing a script, and the whole movie you think the twin brother is like an idiot, but like he tells the idea, yeah, it's a murder mystery, and he finds out that he's trying to find himself.
I forgot about that. Adaptation is such a good fucking movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you brought that up, that's like the first thing I thought of. It's like he finds out that he's really just trying to find himself. Like, and I was like, wow. But no, this is not that kind of a setup. This is a little bit different.
Adaptation is so good because Nick Cage has two modes that he does. In every movie, he's either the one version of Nick Cage, the tortured quiet guy, or he's like the super crazy guy. Right. And like Adaptation let him play both. It's so funny. Like this is the best casting ever.
Yeah. When Pritchard goes through the apartment, he found a Polaroid that was kind of blurry, and so he believed that was the guy they were looking for. Being Tom that spotted Bryce. And he takes that Polaroid out, and then the investigations team goes through and finds other stuff in the house. He comes back, I guess, at headquarters, wherever they're at, and he like kind of just, suddenly goes like, oh, is this the evidence from her apartment? And they're like, yeah. And he just kind of slips a Polaroid to in the whole pile, and he's like, oh, what's this? Like he just found it, so I wanted to name that my number 2 best tradecraft is like returning the Polaroid, so that he could kind of control the information, get the information ahead of time, set it up, and then he like plants it as like a point of significance. I feel like when I've played werewolf games, that's a good way to get yourself looking suspicious, but I guess in this situation, it was a really good play for him to say, "Oh, what's this?" But I like the idea of him, one, confirming that that's the pile of evidence, and 2, like planting it back or returning it to the pile.
Right. I'll definitely give that plus spy points. I would slightly question how he got his hands on like an official evidence bag. I think they're supposed to be like a little more careful about that kind of shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever. Let's cut it here for now. We have got the essential situation described, the whole convoluted way that Tom has gotten himself into the unenviable position of trying to investigate himself and provide evidence that would frame him as a KGB mole in the Pentagon. Next week, we'll come back, settle in, and watch how he tries to thread this tricky little needle.
As always, the best way to make sure you don't miss out on that is to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Google, or your favorite podcast app. Also, you can find updates on our Facebook page or website, spieslikeus.net. And please, if you can help us out and give us some feedback by rating us and leaving comments. We're always trying to improve the show, and your thoughts would be a big help.
The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.